A wise Anon once said there are 3 types of people on the internet: schizos, psychos, and zombies. Welcome to Schizo territory.
A couple years ago, I had this really weird dream one night. I was with my mom. It was a semi-lucid dream. It was really weird. But we were in this place that was very obviously liminal. I don't know how to explain. It was very spirit realmy. And this was before I knew that the spirit realm was a thing. Off in the distance, there was some kind of body of water. It was like a crystal blue, beautiful body of water. Down right next to the water, there was a group of people, and there was like a coffin. The group of people was mourning the person in the coffin. The daughter, I saw the daughter in the dream, and I didn't see her facial features necessarily. I knew her age. I knew it was a woman. I knew it was the woman's daughter. I knew something else about her from the dream that I'm not going to say what it is because it's kind of personal. I didn't know what the dream was about at the time. I could tell the mom was going to be crossing the waters. That it was just implied, if that makes sense. I know that me and my mom were set pretty far away from the waters, but the family of the dead person was like right there next to them. It was a really bizarre dream. It was very lucid feeling too. It was the kind of lucidity that you experience when you are kind of in your astral body. The next night I had a dream. It was a really quick dream, and I woke up and really startled and really scared. I just had this really strong feeling that this woman that I knew was in a lot of trouble. I rightly pinpointed that it was a woman in her late 50s that knew my mom. I didn't get it right, and I misidentified it as a different woman in her 50s that was close to my mom. The first night I had the dream about the family mourning for the death of the mother. The next night I had the dream there was a woman I knew. She was in a lot of danger. Okay, so that's boom, boom. And then the next day we get a phone call that a woman who's very close to us has become very, very sick very, very quickly. I don't normally have dreams like that, and to have 2 dreams like that 2 nights in a row seemed very significant to me. A couple weeks later, that woman died, and basically what I had seen in the dream, that all happened. That all came true. I hadn't talked to her. I didn't know that she was sick. She wasn't sick. It happened very quickly. That changed the way that I looked at the world. Just for the record, I had never really conceptualized death as crossing the waters in my head. That was not a way that I was used to thinking of death. There's that quote from William Penn: "Death is but crossing the world as friends do the seas." In Lord of the Rings, Bilbo and Frodo both cross the seas. It's a very common metaphor, and I think that it's based in a certain reality of the spirit realm, that there is this large sea that separates us. This isn't special in any way. I understand that there's a lot of people who have similar experiences to this, but the way that I'm presenting it, I think is really important. If you like stories of the kind that I just presented, where something very weird happens and then there is a logical implication that there is something going on with the spirit realm, you're gonna love Schizo territory, because that's what it is. I have come to some conclusions about the nature of the spirit realm by using this kind of logical process. I used to be really close to this person who was very hollow and empty inside. I frequently call him trauma liminal, because he, when people are traumatized, they essentially become more liminal. They become closer to the spirit realm in a weird way. And I think part of it is actually because part of them is dead, which is a little spooky. This was a person who was very standoffish. He had a lot of what you would call a fear of intimacy. He wanted control over me, but he didn't want to be in my life. It drove me crazy for years. Months would go by, literally months, and I would not hear from this person at all. Then one morning I would wake up and I would sense this person's presence in my room. It's very strange. How do you even quantify that? I don't know. I would sense this person's presence in my room, and then later that day they would contact me. After months of nothing. Okay, months of no contact whatsoever. It happened again and again and again, and every time I sensed that presence, that day I would be contacted by this person who almost never showed up. That's statistically significant. I also would have dreams that would tell me what this person was going to do before he did it. I remember one time in particular, the dream was really dead on, but I didn't know at the time what was going on in the dream because, again, it hadn't happened yet. It was a very lucid dream, and I was really puzzled puzzled about like, what am I seeing? What is happening? And then a couple weeks later, it happened and I figured out what the dream was about. Personally, I think that people who are hollow like that, they become filled with entities. Sometimes they become puppeted by entities. That's my hypothesis there. I think it has something to do with like the Project Monarch trauma-based mind control. You can traumatize someone to a point that they can compartmentalize their personalities. There is something about that trauma response in certain people, not in all people, that trauma response that can create a void that allows entities to enter, and they're usually not very good entities. I am calling it schizo territory. I just love the name. I defined what a schizo is at the beginning of the episode. Shout out to the schizophrenic community who has not been offended by it. In fact, I actually had a comment from a guy who was like, you know, I'm schizophrenic and the things you're saying here actually seem pretty level-headed. And I'm like, oh dude, thank you. Let me just say that most instances of magic, astrology, mediumship, psychics, interactions with the spirit realm, most of them seem completely full of shit. It's a grift at worst, it's delusion at best, you know, that's most of what's out there, which is another reason why I'm really adamant about creating this. They never provide any evidence, which drives me crazy. If I was experiencing something with the spirit realm, I mean, I am now, I would present evidence. I wouldn't just expect people to believe me. I actually think that the fact that most of the magic community is grifters and crazy people is actually not a bug. It's kind of a feature. More on that in episode 2. You know how when you were a kid you would watch these movies and these kids would uncover these tremendous superpowers. Don't tell my friend Bridget, I don't want anyone to know about my superpowers. And you're watching it as a kid like, fuck it, if I get superpowers, I'm telling everybody. That's what I'm doing. I'm telling everybody. I want everybody to know that this shit is real because you're up against a lot. It's also vaguely horrifying to me that a lot of people who have spiritual experiences never talk about them for fear of being called crazy. Now, I've been called schizo, empty carton, horse teeth, take your meds, crater face, tranny, roasty. You have all made me much stronger. There are a lot of intelligent people who know that the spirit realm is real. They don't feel the need to prove it to people because they know it's real. They've experienced it. I'm not like that. I have to at least put out the evidence, you know? Now, you can, of course, say, I don't believe you, you're lying, obviously, because all of this is based on my testimony. I'm not sitting here summoning spirits for you. I could be making videos about 1,000 different things right now. I don't need this content. I do need to tell this story, though. By the way, if you are still very much materialist, atheistic, scientific, and you want something like that to kind of jostle you in the right direction as far as the spirit realm is concerned, I do have a couple recommendations for you. You can check out Mark Gober's podcast, Where Is My Mind? He does a really good job assembling all of the scientific literature around this. There is a CIA document about the Gateway process, the CIA Project Stargate document, not as much in that one. You can also check out authors like Stephen Skinner and David Rankin. They don't necessarily provide evidence besides their own anecdotal evidence. However, they're very intelligent, well-spoken people who also believe in the spirit realm and believe in magic and all of these things. So just in case you do need something like that, there you go. What I'm presenting here with Schizo Territory is my testimony for how I came to realize that the spirit realm is indeed real. And a lot of that has to do with astrological channeling. So invoking entities from the sky, from the stars, from the planets. I know a lot of people are like, channeling entities from the sky? Who would believe that? Like, who would take that seriously? Every culture ever, except for this one. Except for this systematically brainwashed, shitty one, where the sky has been hidden from you. You might say that the sky has been occulted because of all of the light pollution. Quite literally, every culture believed in channeling entities from the sky. Every single one. Until now. Until this bullshit materialist crap. Ironically, the atheism that we're dealing with today was a magical creation. Imagine if the modern view of how reality and causality worked was completely wrong. The nature of reality is actually best described as magical. I always recommend Chris Warnock for this, of Renaissance Astrology. He does really good interviews. The Great Chain of Being is a real thing. So the idea that the material realm exists inside of the celestial realm, inside of the divine realm, and there are these divine emanations vibrations, like they talk about in Kabbalah, that trickle down from the divine to the celestial to the material. That's all real. That's how it works. That's how it seems to work. The universe is connected through chains of cosmic correspondence and sympathy, which are known as magical correspondences. So a really simple example of a magical correspondence is what you would call like a tag lock. It's like a hair or a nail that you would use to symbolize a person for a spell. Here's a definition of magical tag lock, by the way. Two units that share some property in space and time, such that later when the two objects are separated, there's a residual of the shared property in each. Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. That's the definition for the concept of entanglement in quantum mechanics. Yeah, they're basically the same thing. Interestingly, I first became drawn to this subject through King Kill 33 by James Shelby Downard, in which he talks about symbol complexes. Essentially, he has this idea of all of these symbols being interrelated in exactly the same way as a magical correspondence, which I found out much later. I was very interested in King Kill 33. I was also interested in Saturn and the symbol complex around the planet Saturn, because there's a lot going on there. That's how I ended up figuring out that magic was real. I totally stumbled into it. It was not my intention at all. So what I'm doing here is pretty important, actually. I'm basically using a form of scientific inquiry. It's a logic-based inquiry. Logic is not clinical. It's not oppressive. It's not capital S science or scientism. Logic is the logos, the word, truth, order, Christ. So I've always had a big issue with magic and astrology. People talking about the spirit realm, they say, oh, well, it's not logical, or it's like, no, if it's not logical, then it's not real. It's very rare that I find anyone that I can stand listening to on the subject of magic. There's so much bullshit out there. There's so much